resident of 1 Bellevue. We're here today for the City Council Candidate Forum for 2019. All of these people are running for City Council positions. We'll talk about that in a second. I wanted to tell you a little bit about 1 Bellevue. 1 Bellevue is just basically a bunch of people got together and said we want to do something to help our civic life be better. And so we're just working on stuff. You know, not everyone agrees on every topic. We're not like we're not partisan. Everyone has their own opinions. But we do this just to try to get more engaged with the city and more people involved. And so I really thank you for coming out tonight. Thank all the candidates for coming out tonight. JD's going to be here in just a little bit. And before we do that, though, I'd like to talk to you about a father, a Bellevue resident, former head of the planning committee, and all-around good speaker. He has published in many publications, the newspapers of record around the country, as well as in Seattle, and radio talk shows host and Bellevue resident, John Carlson.
Here are some shots of me during my days as an REI model.
Nice.
I want to thank everyone for taking the time to be out here tonight for this forum. You know what? We are very lucky in Bellevue. I know most of the people up here on stage, and you know, I'm not going to mention any cities by name, but there are plenty of towns where the choice is the lesser of two evils, and in Bellevue, when it comes to the city council, you have your choice of the best candidate. We've got some really good people running, and a lot of cities don't have that opportunity. So here's the format for tonight's forum. First, we want you all to understand what the role of a council member is. And second, we want to differentiate the candidates running for each position so you have an idea of what you're voting for. We're going to have introductions, and then we're going to have questions, the same question for each of the candidates. They'll have 1 minute to respond, and they have every opportunity to use less than that if they prefer. Short, crisp, to the point. We're going to ask 3 of those 1 minute questions. Then we're going to go into a lightning round where we ask a question that is tailored for each of the candidates. Short answer there. And then we get to audience Q&A. So how does that sound? With that said, the candidate introductions. I want to start over here with John Stokes, incumbent. Holly Zhang, running against Mr. Stokes. Jeremy Barksdale and Stephanie Walter running for an open position. And Janice Zahn and JDU. Ms. Jean, the incumbent, and Jennifer Robertson and James Bible, Councilmember Robertson and Attorney James Bible. Regarding how the council works, we don't elect a mayor here in Bellevue, as most of you know. We elect a council and the council members. The 7 members of the council, by majority vote, decide who the mayor is. The city is run on a day-to-day basis by city manager. City council terms are 4 years. Who is running for mayor? Sometimes I think every member of the council is running for mayor. But that election will happen afterwards. The mayor and deputy mayor serve 2-year terms. All right, when is election day? Election day, did some of you get your ballots already? Today? Mine came in today. Election day then starts today, goes to November 5th. You have to have your ballot postmarked or in a drop-off box by November 5th. So with that said, are the candidates ready for the 1-minute questions? We're going to start over here with Mr. Stokes. The first topic is affordable housing. And if you wish to give, say, a 15, 30-second introduction of yourself leading into your answer, that is certainly permissible. Now, here is the question, and again, this will be the same question for all the candidates. The city's affordable housing strategy is rooted in building more affordable units. And I've revised the question a little bit to make it relevant for the audience here. For each of our candidates, how can you make housing more affordable without adding density, condos, townhomes, and apartments, to single-family neighborhoods? So that's Councilmember Stokes. We'll start with you, sir.
Well, I'm very pleased to be here tonight, and I've been on the council for 2 terms. Before that, I was very active in the community, been here somewhat over 30 years. PTSA, council leader, active in state PTA, was involved in the Parks Board levy, and then was on the Parks Board, so I've been involved in about everything that's been going on in Bellevue, and we'll talk about that as we go through these things. But I'm really excited about serving and being here again, because there's so much going on that's fantastic, and we want to keep working with this great community, keeping it that way. And part of it is affordable housing. I was the chief proponent of and architect, in effect, of our affordable housing strategy, which we don't call the plan, it's the strategy. And yes, in the neighborhoods, how do we, the question is doing without without an ADU or anything else? Is that right?
Yeah, again,
Yeah.
How can housing become more affordable? Since we're growing faster than the areas we plan to grow in, how can we add more affordable housing without adding density in areas that are currently single?
Well, I mean, the time's up.
Give him a little bit of time since I clarified the question. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'm not sure there's an answer to that, frankly, without thinking about it, because if you can't add density to the neighborhood, you can't change the market in terms of the pricing for housing. I think that makes it very difficult to do that, which is why we basically understand and keep the neighborhoods as they are.
Okay, thank you very much. Holly Zhang. Again, I'll repeat the question if you want me to.
Okay.
The city's affordable housing strategy is rooted in building more affordable units. How can you make housing more affordable without adding density, such as condos, townhomes, and apartments, to single-family neighborhoods?
I just listened to KUOW just like 2 days ago, and also Seattle Times also did the report. So this one was last year. So there are some empty houses in King County and also Seattle and also Bellevue as well. And there are about 10% King County houses are empty, and then 12% in Seattle. And so 10% King County also including this area as well. So that means we have a global buyers came to this area to purchase houses, and they drive up our properties taxes very high. And we pay approximately about 1% of property taxes. And then right now, so we only take in 11%. And then 89% goes to King County and also states. Those taxes will need to be collected, go back to some part of the tax should go back to Bellevue and help for seniors, for example, who have been living here for many years. And my incumbent, Mr. Stokes, saying, he is a chief author for Bellevue Affordable Housing Strategy, and which is they plan to build 4,500 units in the next 10 years. But we need houses right now because I met people are being pushed out, live without homes and on the streets.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Holly Zhang. Mr. Barksdale and Ms. Walter both serve on the Planning Commission, so you've dealt with affordable housing as an issue. Again, the question is, with affordable housing being a major priority here at Bellevue, how can we make housing more affordable without adding density to single-family neighborhoods? Jeremy.
Thank you. So one of the questions that was on the previous slide was, what's a headline that you read that I think was most exciting to you? And the one that resonated with me was the one that said, I think it was King County, and had purchased an apartment building or several buildings near transit stations. It may not have been King County, I can't remember. But there was, with Microsoft funding, property purchased. And so purchasing residential property or units that currently exist, that are at risk of being put back onto the private market, redeveloped and into luxury units, I think is one way that we can use the existing density and make housing more affordable.
All right, thank you very much. Stephanie Walter.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. And I have a background in economics, and I've thought a lot about the economics, the housing of economics. There's ways to do things and ways not to do it. The city has set aside a growth corridor that is to take the density that's needed for the future. That growth corridor includes a light rail route. It includes transit-oriented development areas, and it's away from neighborhoods. So that's one way. The other way is to fully utilize our housing stock. In my personal neighborhood, there were houses that were empty and they were actually falling to wreck and ruin. And I have one by one reported them to the city, and there's one left to go to be redone. The one next to it is having infill. They're going to have 2 houses go on 1 lot, which is reasonable. It's not an incredible amount of density. So I think what we need to do is we need to put it in the areas that are served by transit. We need to keep it out of the areas that already have a really abysmal transportation level of service, because those neighborhoods are already suffering. I met a doctor when I was campaigning, and he talked about his concern for people being able to get to the hospital with a stroke or heart attack in Northeast Bellevue. He said there are days when he is concerned for his neighbors not being able to have their life saved at the hospital where I work, Over Lake Hospital. I don't save lives, but I work with people who do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Walter. We're going to keep going down the line here. Again, the question is on the topic of affordable housing. The city's affordable housing strategy is rooted in building more affordable units. How can you make housing more affordable as the city is growing ahead of pace without adding density, such as condos, townhomes, and apartments to single-family neighborhoods? Councilmember Zahn.
Thank you. So I'm excited to be here running for re-election to the Bellevue City Council. I've been on the council for just about 2 years, and as a 25-year resident of Bellevue, I'm really excited to serve the community. When I think about affordable housing, I would encourage everyone to take a look at what we've already been doing, which is the almost 100-page affordable housing strategies. We just got an update on Monday, and one of the items that we talked about is looking at, right now, if you're building a new single family, you have to wait 3 years before you're allowed to put in a attached dwelling unit. That's one of the strategies that we're looking at changing. I think we need to be partnering with the neighborhood and the community to talk about what do we need to do. I understand that actually in bridle trails there's an allowance, or cottages are allowed in that neighborhood, but many other neighborhoods are not allowed to have a detached ADU. So what would that look like in order for us to look at that stock? The other thing with affordable housing is that we need to also be looking at where we can actually put housing close to transit, because it will relieve the need for more density in any single family neighborhood. So the city made a commitment that we were going to put density in places where we had transit and in the transit-oriented development, and we've been doing that, and we need to continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to JDU. Mr. Yu.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. JDU. I've been in Somerset Community Association board for 3 years. I serve as a CRC member. I know how the people feel in the single-family house area. This question, if I understand, is not talking about just affordable housing, but there's some other condition with it's a single-family house and without increase in density. So I would think that house affordable because of the demand is more than the supply. That causes the price. Many people want to buy a house, so price going up. And so that means the supply is not enough. So in order to increase the supply, very simple. If we have a single family, then if we have to expand the area for the single family zone to make it build more single family without increasing the density, the simple theory. Here we're talking about theory. Otherwise, because this is a free market economy, unless we say, hey, let's change that, we cannot allow this free market. We have to control the price. That's a different story. So in this case, either we expand the single-family house to build more for the DU that's increased density. So it's out of this condition, so we cannot consider that. So basically, or we have to really utilize those houses that has not been really have people live there. We have to not have an empty house there.
Thank you, Mr. Yu. Again, the question is, with affordable housing being a major priority for many people across the city, and with single-family neighborhoods, the integrity of single-family neighborhoods being a priority for many people across the city, how can we make housing more affordable without adding density, such as condos, townhomes, and apartments, to single-family neighborhoods? Councilmember Jennifer Robertson.
Thank you. I'm Jennifer Robertson. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. I'm running for my 4th term on the Bellevue City Council. During all my time of service for the city, my primary goal as a council member has been to make sure that we have a high quality of life for everyone who calls Bellevue home. But we have growth, and that growth means we don't have enough housing for the people who are living here or who are wanting to live here, or our children who want to live here after they finish their education. So what do? We don't have enough supply, which makes the price go up. We do have an affordable housing strategy in Bellevue, which we are implementing. We are on track to have more than 2,500 units in the next 10 years. However, let me tell you about that. So we have a study of how much buildable lands we have in Bellevue and whether we have enough lands and open land to serve the growing population. The answer is yes, we do. And the answer still holds true even if we don't touch the single-family neighborhoods, because that is not where we have infrastructure to deal with the growth. We have infrastructure to deal with the growth in the growth corridors like downtown and Bellevue, and that is where our major growth is going to go. So that's where the demand can be met, but how do we keep it affordable? Our strategy has many elements: multifamily tax exemption, direct funding by the council, which we've almost quadrupled during my time on the council. We have zoning incentives, and we have preservation. We use city land, and we're working on it. Lots more to come tonight. Looking forward to engaging. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Robertson. Mr. Bible, how can we make more housing affordable to more people in Bellevue without adding density to single-family neighborhoods?
It's good to be home. I call this my home because I grew up right around the corner from here in an apartment. Sometimes 1 bedroom, every now and then a 2. I played basketball right here in this community center and interacted with so many of the staff that helped me to grow and be the person that I am today. All neighborhoods in Bellevue matter, including those that are population dense. The reality is that we need to be in a space where we're not afraid to have courageous conversations, and perhaps even more importantly, we actually listen to our neighborhoods, listen to our neighbors. Some of the folks in our neighborhoods actually want their neighborhoods to shift to some degree. We should be listening to them. Some of our neighbors actually want to be in a place where they can rent out portions of their house or build upon it. We should be hearing from them. Some neighbors want their single-family homes and they want to maintain what they currently have, and we should be listening to them as well. We need to be in a place where we continue to grow in our areas that are already population dense, where we continue to build apartments and think creatively in terms of how to address an issue in a situation where we have folks that are homeless in Bellevue, 300 public school students, homeless in Bellevue, one of the least affordable towns in the nation, right here in Bellevue. This isn't necessarily just about your neighborhood, it's about whether or not we're prepared to do what's right for people that are trying to find a home.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to our next topic, which is transportation. And I'm going to call an audible in order to be fair to the people who are sitting inland. Let's have everyone stay on this side of the table during the presentations. On transportation, let's see, I do have the transportation. Yes, here we go. The Council's Transportation and Mobility Vision Summary is getting into, around, and through Bellevue. It's a given. Transportation is reliable and predictable, and the mode choices are abundant and safe. So with that in mind, can you explain your vision and rationale for multimodal? In other words, to you, what does multimodal mean? And this time I'm going to start with you, James, and we're going to go the other way.
I should have stayed standing. Multimodal basically means exactly that, multimodal. Many ways of transportation, that's ultimately what it means, whether it be by foot, whether it be by alternative means, whether it be by metro bus, whether it be by carpool, bicycle, whether it be by sound transit. The reality is that we need to create a system that allows for people to move easily and freely and protects the environment in our particular city, and that's what we are starting and working towards. We just need to continue to build that. The reality is, it takes 40 minutes to get somewhere that only takes 10 to 15 minutes to actually get to in Bellevue, am I right? You know I am. So when we're there, how do we figure out how to deal with this? Part of this would naturally involve getting our bang for our buck out of Metro. We put more into it than we actually get. That's a start. And then being in a place where we actually work with our private partners, our corporations, and make sure that our work schedules are shifting in such a degree that we're in a space where, well, not everybody's on the road at exactly the same time.
All right. Jennifer Robertson, please explain your vision and your description of multimodal.
Well, multimodal, of course, is that there's all different modes that can get you where you need to get, when you need to get there. There's your feet, there's your bike, there's the car, carpool, vanpool, bus, light rail, and then you can get there in a way that's safe and reliable. So the things we've been doing in Bellevue to make sure that this happens is we're trying to make sure, my policy and the council's policy has been that we have net adds for mobility. We're not going to take from one mode and give to another. We're going to expand all modes. So when we've been overlaying the streets, we've been able to stripe in bike lanes without taking away car lanes. That adds mobility and safety for bicyclists. When we've been working, advocating strongly with our transit providers to get better service. One thing that I'm personally working on right now is I'm advocating to bring back the idea of a downtown bus circulator so that in the downtown, maybe out to Bellevue, people don't have to move their car when they're going just a few blocks or a half a mile. They can jump on a bus and get there so that we can avoid gridlock. Thank you.
JDU, what is multimodal to you, sir?
Multimodal system is multi-options that the people have different choices. Now, I think more than 80% of the people depend on the vehicles, and especially on the personal vehicle. That causes the people to conject too many cars on the road. So multimodal system is we have to utilize mainly is the transportation, the transit, light rail when it's ready, and the public bus. And also I want to promote the autonomous vehicles, which can be very frequent, reliable, But very important is accessibility, connectability, and we have to have a 5G to connect all these things together, make it very smart. We just say, hey, there's a lot of things out there, but they're all individual. You cannot utilize them. And for our shorten, we have to increase our capacity. And one of the things, master the 405 plan. Right now, there's a plan there. It's just that we don't have the funding. We need to have that, and also work with the big company to resolve the commute problem.
Thank you very much. Janice Zahn, explain what multimodal means to you.
Multimodal means transportation choices. It's about a whole system. So when I think about Bellevue moving into the future, in 2023, part of our multimodal system is having light rail, it's having bus rapid transit along 405, it's having the East Side Rail Corridor so that people can bike as well as walk. It is looking at strategically, we have a transit master plan, we have a ped and bike plan. It's looking at all of those. I see Vic Bishop in the audience. When I was on the Transportation Commission with him, we started working on a multimodal level of service. This idea that as we look at all of our streets, it's a system where all of the different modes have to work together. The city's also been working on, and we adopted Complete Streets, Vision Zero. We passed a small levy so that we can make sure that we're working on congestion out of neighborhoods, as well as putting in sidewalks and bike paths. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janice. All right, Stephanie Walter, multimodal. Let's be multimodal with a microphone. Okay, here we go.
So I think in terms of mobility, mode of transportation is how you get there, but it's mobility. We need to be able to go where we want, when we want, and how we want. We need transit options that are attractive, so we will choose them over any other mode of transportation. We have a really good bus system in downtown Seattle, not so much in Bellevue. So I understand the origin of that was all the jobs used to be in downtown Seattle, so all of our funding for transit went to downtown Seattle, which made sense at the time. It no longer makes sense. We need a better set of metro services inside of Bellevue, and they need to be funded with the money we're currently paying. We need to wrestle some of that away. I probably didn't make any friends with Metro right there. But I want transit to be so attractive that it is the option that people take, not because they should, but because they want to.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Jeremy Barksdale, multimodal.
Multimodal, as you've heard, it's about choices, having the option to choose the way that you get around. With all the jobs coming into downtown and throughout, the urban growth centers in the area, it's going to be even more important that we provide transportation choices to mitigate some of those first and last mile challenges. So that as we build light rail, we also make it easy for people to get to light rail so they can take it. Make it easier for people to get to the bus stop so that it's safer for them. And so, the other side benefit to this is that it also helps our economy in terms of if people do feel safe walking and biking and, getting out of their cars, and that means potentially more business for our businesses, but also it means improved community engagement because people are passing each other and have the opportunity for that spontaneous engagement as well.
Very good. Thank you very much, Jeremy. Holly Zhang, when you think multimodal, what do you think?
I agree that we need multiple transportation system solutions. We need smaller buses, I think, to go in our neighborhood to pick up isolated seniors, for example, and immigrants like my mother. And this also helps, use Uber type solutions. And the first and the last mile problems, and then we probably should also have maybe free buses maybe in the downtown area and encourage more commuters, for example, in the morning to go to drop them off at parking rides, and this also can reduce some traffic in the city area.
All right, and Councilmember Stokes.
Well, one of the benefits of being on the end of the line is you have got a lot of answers on this. And what's amazing is I think all of us understand it's great that we really have a kind of common understanding of what needs to be done. All the above is good. We are working on that. Bellevue has been very aggressive in terms of approaching these, but we have a whole long way to go. The downtown area is becoming more and more dense. It's going to be even more so. The biggest problem, besides, and we've talked about circulators, we even talked about some autonomous ones when we build a Grand Connection and then circulating downtown. So that's in the works. It only takes time and money. The big issue is really the neighborhoods, and same thing we have in Seattle. If you live in a neighborhood, it's very difficult to get transportation and to actually afford paying for transportation to pick up people everywhere you go. So we're working on that, and the autonomous vehicles will help. We have a very strong person that is involved in transportation innovation, so we're working on it.
Okay, thank you very much. We've got a few people who've arrived late, so wanted to clarify, we have 4 council seats up for election in November. We have John Stokes running against Holly Zhang. We have Jeremy Barksdale and Stephanie Walter competing for an open seat. We have Janice Zahn and J.D. Yu running against each other, and we have Jennifer Robertson and James Bible. So those are the candidates and who they are running against. So we have one more question where there's 1 minute for each of the candidates, and we go from transportation to homelessness. Now here we're addressing one particular aspect of homelessness, and that is street vagrancy, often aggravated by mental illness and drugs. Some people who are offered help refuse that help. Some who are offered shelter refuse shelter. Some accept the offer for shelter and get kicked out. So the question I have is, what do we do if a homeless person who has a drug or alcohol problem rejects treatment, rejects shelter because they don't like the rules, and they want to keep using it? They have not been able to answer this question in the city of Seattle as we see. So, some people are concerned that the problem is now growing in other communities, and we're seeing symptoms of it here in Bellevue. So with that said, start with Mr. Bible. James, if someone rejects treatment, rejects going to a shelter with rules, and wants to keep using and staying on the street, what do you think?
Is this a question just specifically to me? Or?
No, it's going all up and down the road.
I'm just first.
You're the first.
Okay, thank you. Could you say the question?
Yes. Again, we are addressing the issue of street homelessness, where many homeless people have mental issues and addiction issues. If someone rejects treatment, rejects going to a shelter with rules, and wants to stay on the street and keep using or drinking or snorting or injecting, what should we do?
The first thing I can tell you is this is a remarkable if. As a lawyer and as a person who actually cares about human beings and someone who has dealt with and helped and worked with people that are addicts, just about every addict doesn't want to stay in that place. They want something different. Just about every person that can't find a place to sleep wants to have a safe, warm spot to sleep. And the reality is, in our situation and in our world, with all of our resources and our fancy homes and our big cars and our large apartments that stay empty, we cannot afford to decide to give up on human beings, even if those human beings sometimes give up on themselves. This is really a question of whether or not we're prepared to do what's right. And what's right is to not give up. What's right is to continue to reach out. What's right is to make sure that housing is present and not to demonize the person and say you can never be better than what you are. You chose this, and then not look in the mirror and think of how we might be responsible for creating those inequities that are present. Yes!
Thank you. Jennifer Robertson.
Thank you. I agree. It's not compassionate to not help people who need help. And when they refuse help, which does sometimes happen, it is not compassionate to allow them to live on the streets, sleep outside, and continue using, because if they never hit bottom, any of you who have known addicts, there's that watershed moment sometimes where they hit bottom, and that is the thing that gets them help. Allowing them to live in squalor and not having consequences of the actions does not help the person who needs help. So I am very much proud of the fact that the city of Bellevue now has 24/7, 365 shelter and day center, and that we fund addiction treatment, and that we fund affordable housing, and that we fund homeless services. On the other hand, I'm also proud that we enforce our codes. We enforce our no camping ordinances. We enforce our criminal laws, because it does not help anybody, the person who is suffering or the general public, to ignore it and allow it to go on.
All right.
Yes.
Mr. Yu, again, for the audience, dealing with a particular subset of the homeless that has been very problematic and a difficult problem to solve. If a homeless person with addiction issues rejects treatment, they're not interested. They don't want to go to a shelter if it has rules, and they just want to be left alone to keep using. What should we do?
I think this is exactly the reason that we have more homeless people, because according to the data, that many homeless people is related to the drug addiction and mental illness. And we need homeless itself is just the outcome. It's not the reason. And these people have a problem because they cannot control themselves, and the things they did lead them to the homeless situation. In order to change them, we want them to be able to stand on their own. They have to change to resolve the problem. The cause they're homeless. So therefore, the treatment has to be there. We want to compassionate it. However, we cannot have a different standard when the police enforce the law, because for our neighborhood to be safe, we have to be treated equal for everybody. And we can help them, give them a place to live, but we have to let them to get the treatment. They have to be responsible for the reason cause them homeless. Otherwise, we cannot make them stand by themselves.
Janice Zong, it's a simple but difficult question. What do we do?
Well, I would say that, first of all, we need to acknowledge that drug addiction happens for both the housed and the unhoused. In addition to that, what Bellevue's been doing with compassionate enforcement is a three-pronged approach. One, we need to make sure that we have facilities for people to go to that are experiencing homelessness. Two, we need to be able to provide services for them, case management, mental illness, drug dependency. And then three, if folks are resistant to that, then we do enforcement, which is that at the end of the day, if we do have those services and the beds and folks are not ready to take on that piece, then we will enforce the rules that we have. At the same time, the other thing we're doing is we're also advocating at the county and the state level for more drug treatment beds, for more funding, so that we can actually have places for folks to go. Because the reality is that sometimes folks are ready and there's no place for them to go.
Thank you very much. Stephanie Walter, if a homeless individual with drug and or alcohol problems rejects offers of treatment, does not want to go to a shelter if it has rules, and wants to keep using, what do we do?
Our shelters need to be safe. The current plan for shelters is not robust enough. I work at a hospital and I see the staffing that a hospital takes to keep every person who comes into the hospital safe. We have our own security department We only call on police when it is above and beyond and someone needs police action. If we're going to get serious about homelessness, a shelter needs to be safe. A safe shelter, what I hear, people who reject the shelter is because they feel it's not safe. Well, we need to take that as an excuse away. So then we're dealing with they'd rather have no rules or they'd rather stay on the street. There was an interview on KUOW that was heartbreaking where a woman's sister was talking about her drug-addicted sister, that they were waiting for her to hit bottom. Well, she hit bottom, but she's going to die anyway because of all the health conditions that were created for her on the street. To me, that is not compassion. That is an oversight of what compassion is. Overlooking compassion.
Thank you, Stephanie Walter. Jeremy Barksdale, want me to repeat the question or?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. If a homeless drug addict rejects offers of treatment and does not want to go to a shelter with rules and simply wants to keep living on the streets, what do we do?
Thank you. So, you've heard about the compassion enforcement that Janice had mentioned. One of the things that I find really fascinating about our police department, and I'm originally from a different area of the country where there's a little bit less compassion, is that they take that compassionate part really seriously, right? And I think it's important that we don't confuse compassion with, meaning that we don't take action, if it's necessary. What I do think is that we need to make sure that we do have the shelter capacity, that we have the services for people experiencing homelessness, and also that we, one of the biggest challenges I think that people experiencing homelessness face is, how do they feel within the community, right? And so what is that sense of belonging that we can provide for people experiencing homelessness? And that doesn't mean that, we turn a blind eye to anything, but what it does mean is that we have to take some responsibility as a community on the effect on people experiencing homelessness. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. Let's go to Holly Zhang. Holly.
When I was a teenager, when I was 16 years old, I left home and I spent a year couch surfing. I was homeless. And I understand how it feels to be homeless, scary. And I wish I could have a home to stay, keep me safe, warm. And I've read some articles about what other places have done solving homeless issue. For example, Finland. They talk about housing first. Utah, they talk about housing first. They build smaller units for homeless people. And we have architects and designers. They build affordable fixes for shelters and temporary housing. And if we spend $3,000 for a single dwelling unit, and with just a simple water and electricity, we can build lots of homes for homeless.
Thank you very much, Holly. Councilman Stokes, you want me to repeat the question? Or?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, your question is a very narrow question, and I think that's an important one. A lot of good answers on this. The fact of the matter is we do deal with it, and it's not Seattle, and we have a very robust program. The shelters do a great job. We have people who work on this, and if somebody comes in and doesn't want to comply with the rules, the police do deal with it. So it's almost as if the question was asked if we were in Seattle, but we're in Bellevue, and we don't have that situation. And it's very, very, very few people who don't want to go to a shelter, and they're not all drug addicts. But this is specifically on drug addicts. That's another issue. But absolutely, we deal with it, and a couple of council members in responses have acknowledged that. So maybe in conversation people think it's something different. The fact of the matter is we don't have people out there on the streets who are just wild by themselves. We have a shelter, and as long as we have a shelter, we can put them there, and we have them in the shelter, we deal with it whichever way it goes, in a good, strong, compassionate way.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Mr. Stokes. Now we go to the lightning round where we have questions that are tailored. Yeah, that's what I meant. I used the wrong term. I apologize for that, Pam. Yes, what I meant is we have questions tailored for each of the candidates that we'll go to. And we're going to start with John Stokes.
And what time?
Is that 60 seconds. The city approves permanent homeless shelters by conditional use permits or developer agreements. A developer agreement is approved by the council without requiring a public hearing. When is a developer agreement appropriate, and explain your vision for the city's role as an enforcer of a permit?
Well, the choices we have in a lot of situations, the development agreement or going through a conditional use permit, the advantage of the use of a conditional use permit is that we have standards and we have it set out and we have a process on it. It takes longer, sometimes more cumbersome, sometimes not actually accomplishing the purpose you want to. A development agreement is something that would enable us in right circumstances, and I'm not saying we do it at all, to actually tailor something in a way that makes it more effective. And we can have a little more leeway, and we can also get it done a little faster without the cumbersome bureaucracy sometimes. So it's a choice, and it's something that we would wouldn't take lightly. It would be discussions, and while there's not a required, may not be a required hearing, we would actually have, we do all this stuff in the public, so it's not an issue. The issue is which one of those two tools is the best one to use, and that's what we would work on. They both would get a good result.
All right, very good. Oli Zhang, next question comes to you. Given that you've not had a role in city politics yet, you'll have a steep learning curve, as any newly elected person would be to council. What do you see as the role of a council member, and what do you think it takes to perform it well?
That's a very good question. I think as a city council member, should be a good listener. Listen what people want, not what they want to do. Government transparency. We need to have citizens involved with our hearings, issues. We should also work together as a community and to solve our problems, not self-interest. That's good enough. I'm here to learn. I'm here to learn, and I'm new candidate, and I'm so happy to be here when I get elected, and I'll be your voice. Thank you.
All right, let's move on to our next candidate, Jeremy Barksdale. You're on the board member of Fuse, which advertises itself as Washington's largest progressive organization, people creating change online, on the ground, and on the issues that matter most. What programs and policies drew you to Fuse, and what impact have you had on the organization?
Thank you. What if I had to talk about Fuse? It's around equity, right? Whether we talk about pay equity, racial equity, gender equity, environmental justice, right? Making sure that we're helping to advance the policies or things that help everyone thrive and sort of bring everybody along together. As a board member, I'm not involved in the day-to-day activities. What I am involved in are the more generative discussions around, how we think about equity and so forth, right? And overseeing, similar to council actually, overseeing, the overall strategy in terms of, what area of equity do we want to focus on, for example. And so and also in terms of budget and things like that. So I'm not involved in the day-to-day, but it's more of I'm interested in equity and helping everyone thrive, and that's what you're going to do.
Thank you, Jeremy. On next to Stephanie Walter. You first came to public policy, leading the effort to clarify the meaning of single-family housing when individual room rentals were going up. Given private property rights, why not allow the owner of a home to choose how a building is rented?
It's all about zoning and land use code. If we did not have zoning and land use code, there would be chaos. Anything could happen anywhere. People in neighborhoods want predictability. They want to know that their neighborhood isn't going to be overly dense for the sewer system or for the roads or for the schools. We need predictability. What happened in my neighborhood was not density. It was a commercial enterprise where homes were taken out of the affordable housing stock and cut up into individual sleeping areas without any permits, so they weren't safe. They were fire hazards. They were health hazards. The very first house this happened in actually had 3 sexual assaults in it. It was something that could be predicted. This is one of the areas that government has to step in. We can't do everything we want anywhere we want without having a concern for reason.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Now on to our next candidate, Janice Zahn. Janice, you voted for the shelter land use code without having buffers for residential neighborhoods. This is what it says. Please explain how you came to that decision and why are shelters near residential areas or residential neighborhoods safe?
So we just came back last week from Dallas, where there's a shelter within 2 blocks of a bunch of residences. And as I think about the shelter resident, the folks that are coming out of homelessness and what they need is not isolation. What they need are services to help them re-engage with the community. The shelter that is currently being designed now actually is going to have 80 supportive housing units for men and women, along with 300 units that will include 3 bedrooms for families. What we need to do is make sure that we are designing for the shelters so that they are successful for both the folks that are in there in that temporary basis, as well as the communities around it. The more that we push shelters into places where they are isolated, the less likely they're going to be successful.
Thank you. Now, JD, you commented that taxpayer money should be used efficiently, spent on valuable city functions first. So, how do you propose keeping taxes low, and what areas of the city budget do you think need to be reduced?
We have to spend what we have. There are many things we want to spend. We have to cut some of the spending, wasteful spending. For example, we said the homeless shelter, the permanent one, many drug addiction people, they don't want to go to the facility. But if we propose to build more, that's a waste of the spending. I will not agree on that. Transportation is a problem. Facility is our congestion is a problem. Master 405 plan, we are lack of funding. And why don't we try to put the money in those which is very critical for our people's life? And that's what we should put more money in.
Thank you, Mr. Yu. Now we're going to go on to Jennifer Robertson and James Bible. Jennifer, start with you. In the past, the city studied creating a multi-purpose aquatic center. You've shown some interest in moving this forward. Land acquisition costs would be high. Aquatic centers have high maintenance and ownership costs. Given regional housing and transportation needs, why should everyone out here spend money on an expense like this one?
Well, for one thing, I'm so happy to get this question. Drowning is the #1 cause of accidental death of children under 4, and the #2 cause of accidental death of children 5 to 14. We have a 2-year wait list at our pool in Bellevue, and there are children from many other countries who move to Bellevue who don't know how to swim. Every summer we read about kids drowning in the lake. That is not acceptable. This is a health need as well as a recreation need and something that will help everyone in Bellevue. We need more pool space. How do we fund it? 1, we're looking at 4 sites. Every single one of them is on public property so that we won't have land acquisition costs. 2, we're working to get a lot of different partners, both public and private, to help staff the capital, including Splash Forward, who will be raising money for this event. 3, I've studied pools around the country, and if you have dry services like aerobic studios, yoga studios, weight rooms, you can cover up to 94% of the operating costs. We can do this, and it will be great for our community.
Thank you very much. James Bible. Bellevue City Council positions are not partisan. You don't run by party. They're nonpartisan. You have chosen to include Democrat in your campaign yard signs and campaign signage. Why did you choose to do this? And do you think the City Council should be partisan?
It is time to have courageous conversations that involve honesty. And what I can tell you is that there are absolutely Republicans up here at this forum. They just haven't said it. I've reviewed the law, reviewed the RCWs, determined exactly what nonpartisan meant. And what it actually meant was that 2 people of the same party could actually make it past the primaries. So ultimately, I'm telling you the truth about what my position is. I'm not trying to hide it from you. I am unapologetically Democrat. I believe in social justice. I believe in human rights. I believe in treating human beings like human beings. I believe in telling you all the truth. Whether you agree with me all the time or not, you will know where I stand, and I won't be selling you something other by saying, oh, I'm an independent, when clearly I'm a Democrat. Now, does that mean that I would only decide based on Democratic values? No. I have my own independent analysis that I will always use as a lawyer, as a human being, as a person that's dedicated to doing what's right above all other things.
10 categories. Again, this is going to go quick. That's why we call it lightning round. And you will each have 1 opportunity out of 10. So pick the category you want to talk on to address the issue with more than just raising your hand. You can raise your hand and then indicate why you feel the way you feel. So, with that said, you guys ready to roll?
Okay, 1 minute for each candidate. So every candidate has a card, and somebody raised a card and show them the card. So if Jeremy did that, then he would get 1 minute on that topic to talk. But he only gets to talk to 1 topic. So he has a list of topics there that he can choose, know kind of what's coming next, but he doesn't know the exact question.
So this entire 10-point lightning round probably won't go more than about 15 minutes. Because how you voting, who wants to speak, you get a minute, let's go on. And everyone gets just 1 chance for 60 seconds. Okay? With that said, transportation modes. I see we've got Husky Purple. The game is going again. Here we go. All right. 10 questions. First of all, on terminology, level of service is roughly the same as capacity. Level of service approved by the council. For vehicles, A means traffic is normally flowing free, while DE means traffic is congested with backups. All right? So with that said, here we go with our question. We're not far from the Wilburton district, okay? Just down the hill. Well, down and up and down the hill. For our candidates, raise your hand if it is acceptable to reduce capacity for vehicles on arterials to improve capacity for bicycles. Raise your hand.
Okay, so right now I also want you to read the green part too. So
Well, Wilburton's maintained at level D for vehicles at 4 to 6 p.m. As expected, vehicles will move at about 11 miles an hour on 116th. Thank you, Chick-fil-A. Drivers increasingly frustrated. So, with that said, as an example, but this of course would apply citywide, not just to Wilburton, this would apply citywide. Raise your hand if it is acceptable to reduce capacity, that means remove a lane, for vehicles on arterials, to improve capacity for bicyclists, non-motorized vehicles.
Okay, so if nobody raises their hand, also the question, the next thing is ask the audience if they agree or not.
Okay, audience. Raise your hand if you think it's acceptable to reduce capacity for vehicles on arterials to improve capacity for bicycles. Keep your hand up if you pedaled here tonight. None of us would blame you if you didn't. All right. You can use your card.
Just raise your card up.
But this is of the 10 subject areas we cover, this is the only one you can speak of. If you use your card now, you only get to raise your card and speak for 1 minute at one time.
Everybody will wait for the last question.
Did you want to wait or do you want to go? Okay.
1 minute, Mike. I want to use the card because we have a pen and bike plan that talks about where we are very intentional about putting in bike lanes that are, and one of the goals about Vision Zero is that they are protected and separated so that we can get more people to safely ride on our streets, because part of the capacity building is to leverage all of the lanes that we have to get multimodal in Bellevue. So when I think about this question, it is not we are going to put bike lanes everywhere. It is that intentionality about making sure that we're building the commitment of having 2 north-south and 2 east-west through corridors for bikes, because with REI coming, they're building a huge corral for the people that are going to be biking into Bellevue from where their office is back in Kent. And as well as Amazon has a lot of people that are going to be taking alternative modes.
Next, transportation planning. The One Bellevue organization believes that when an area is upzoned, traffic and congestion do not always seem to be integral to planning. The example given is Eastgate. So, candidates, raise your hand if you will strongly support a public hearing focused on traffic and transportation before approving any major upzones on the council. Okay. Oh, and someone's using her card. That would be Jennifer Robertson. No.
So, land use, I'm a land use attorney who represents cities, and I do a lot of transportation policy work as a council member of the region. Land use and transportation are 2 things that go together. You have to have the capacity for the infrastructure, which includes roads, it includes transit, includes pet facilities, when you upzone an area. When we did the Eastgate plan, I was council liaison to that in 2010, and we did look at transportation heavily. The Transportation Commission held a public hearing on the plan. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on the land use component, and the council adopted it. They go well together, but when the development starts, that's when the impact fees start to come in, and that's when the traffic starts to come. We are moving forward on some amazing Eastgate projects, which are going to really help mobility in that area. We're doing work now, and there's more that are teed up in the years to come, because that's where the growth is going to be. We cannot grow our land use without having transportation to go with it.
Thank you.
Okay, so from bike lanes to public hearings to now our last question on transportation this evening, at least until the Q&A from all of you, is congestion. Eastgate has proven deep traffic studies identify specific projects that reduce vehicle congestion. Ms. Simonette, my English teacher in 8th grade, would call that a run-on sentence. But you get the idea. So, candidates, please raise your hand if you support studies for highly congested neighborhood areas and funding projects that make congestion reduction a first priority. Again, raise your hand if you support studies for highly congested neighborhood areas and then funding projects according to what reduces vehicular congestion the most. Show of hands. Mr. Bible, Ms. Robertson, Mr. Yu, Ms. Zahn, Stephanie Walter. Is everybody up except Paula? Okay, that's all right. That's all right. Does anyone want to use their card? Then let's move along.
Okay, what does the audience
JDU, just before the bell. Go ahead.
Sorry.
I think congestion is the most complained problem that during my doorbell in the neighborhoods, not only the Eastgate but also all other neighborhoods. And each neighborhood has their own different problem. Some of the neighborhoods say, oh, it's too noisy, and some of them it's a congestion. Here is the congestion. So therefore, study, we have to be very careful why it's congested. Because, for example, I live in Somerset. At the bottom of the Somerset, there's a traffic light. That traffic light it's not intelligent. It just never change. And until really you really want to make a turn, but that's the problem. So we need to understand that part and why other congestion. So the flow could be, but at the same time, we need to be careful that the safety. That's very important because we cannot just say, hey, give the road to other, for example, bikes, but sacrifice the vehicles because 84% of the people still rely on the vehicle for transport.
Thank you, Mr. Yu. Okay, now we're going to move on to...
Well, first, what did the audience think of that? Who agrees with that? They agree.
Okay, there we go. Congestion reduction is a major priority with the audience. Yes, we will now poll the audience. Okay, let's move to affordable housing. Bellevue provides incentives to developers to build more affordable housing. Tax exemptions, deferrals, and the like. Of course, affordable housing is still an issue because so many people keep moving here. So, with that said, raise your hand if you support mandatory affordable housing requirements for any new multifamily development. Raise your hand if you support mandatory affordable housing requirements for new multifamily development. Okay? Audience, raise your hand if you support mandatory affordable housing requirements for new multifamily development.
Can you define multifamily? How many families? You need to define multifamily.
Okay.
Okay, so can we have a person on the
Apartments and
council?
condos.
Okay, let Jennifer explain it. You know what the definition. I don't know that.
So single-family homes are individual units. Multifamily is anything where you have more than one unit on a single lot, with the exception of accessory dwelling units that are part of single-family homes. That's not multifamily. So apartments, townhomes, high-rise condos, those are multifamily.
Okay. And we have Stephanie Walter is using her card on this question.
Thank you. Affordable housing is really important. There's very many levels of affordable housing. It's affordable to who? So if we can talk about housing affordability, We need workforce housing, we need low-income housing, we need to be able to help seniors stay in their house by keeping their taxes low. And I would lobby Olympia to stop raising taxes on areas like Bellevue where the seniors are being taxed out. The tax credit is not enough. I know people who are leaving the area who built their families here. So affordable housing, if you mandate it, it won't get built. It doesn't pencil, and that's a term I used to not like until I fully understood it. The developers don't have a big pocket of money that they can just go and build. They have to borrow that money, and there has to be a return on investment. There's a formula for investors to invest, for banks to invest. In order for it to be built, it has to pencil. Too many affordable units don't let it get penciled. We need tax rebates, we need multifamily tax credit, we need surplus land. There's a lot of ways to do it that don't mandate, and it will actually get built. So if you want it, don't mandate it.
Okay, we're almost halfway through. The next topic is. You want to use your card? Go ahead. You're using your card.
I think earlier I didn't finish my talk. For affordable housing, according to several times, the KUOW and then also Vancouver, British Columbia, they have done some crackdown on illegal cash buying houses in this area. And also this is a money laundering crime in this area as well. That's cause we have lots of empty for foreigner buying houses in this area because they call it wealth storage units, and they basically use it as an investment. I think those issues our city council or local government should pay attention, do some more investments, and those issue has happened for quite a few years. And my incumbent, Mr. Stokes, being in the city council for 8 years, and we should do something, not wait, and then have to solve it right now.
Thank you very much. The next topic is sleeping in cars. Some people prefer their cars to homeless shelters because you heard it mentioned already here this evening, they feel safer there. Some in safe parking lots, some where they simply find a place to park. So, candidates, raise your hand if you feel that the city should intervene and find solutions that do not require people living in their cars.
What does intervene?
Well, One Bellevue.
Oh, you're arresting?
So I'll take that question. The question is intervene. I changed that from do something. So we're not saying how they should intervene, it's that they should do something. So we had a case of people that said you need to be in your car before you can go to a shelter, things like that. So that's the question. Should you do something?
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Is it in that moment do something, or generally as a matter of policy do something?
Whatever you think. It's up to you. You guys have to figure out the problems, I don't.
Okay, so this is pretty much you get to define your own terms. But
Okay, so raise your hands if you agree. Okay.
okay, and with that said, we'll start with James Biden.
In a candidate's forum just like this, only a couple of weeks ago, a well-dressed lady stood up in the back row and she told us all of her circumstances and her woes. Her husband had left, she had gotten sick, and she ended up homeless. She ended up homeless with her 14-year-old child who was attending, I believe, Sammamish High School and was asking for our help, frankly, the help of anyone. And she told us all that even though there are certain rules and things that happen in relation to cars and police in Bellevue, when the police actually saw her, they said, you can park your car over here. You'll be safe right here. Absolutely, we should intervene. We should be in a place where we definitely promote affordable housing, where we move and create shelters that accept children, where we're in a place where we make sure that there are wraparound services, many of which we have already, but we can do better. We shouldn't rest on our laurels, that support families that are stuck in circumstances where they have very little choice but to sleep in cars.
May I say something? That's not the
No,
story.
no, you guys, let's wait till the audience, you can raise your hand if you agree with it.
Yeah, we'll have that section coming up.
So do you agree with the, raise your hand if you feel this? Yes or no? The city should intervene somehow. Okay? That's about half the audience.
Neighborhood planning outreach is the next category. It says great neighborhood planning is focused on ground-up vision for each neighborhood. Raise your hand if you will strongly support creating a toolkit, you get to define this one too, Pam, to form a baseline of questions for any neighborhood together with neighborhood leaders.
So part of the question here, I'll explain it, the toolkit. Right now we have people going through neighborhood planning in the last year and it hasn't gone anywhere, and part of that is a lot of things, but one of the problems is they're focused on all these problems that they've had forever, and the city seems to be more focused on what do you want in your neighborhood, what's your dream, and it's basically how are we going to deal with all these things right here. So why don't we look at all the neighborhood plans right now and figure out what are those problems that we have issues with already before we go into all this planning and dreaming. That's the question.
Okay, so with that said, go ahead and raise your hand if you support creating a toolkit to form a baseline of questions for neighborhoods in these processes. Okay, and John Stokes is using his card. Go ahead, Councilman.
So Holly didn't raise her hand, but everyone else.
Yeah, actually, I agree. I think, every neighborhood's different, every neighborhood's the same. And when we were discussing this, I argued very strongly that we should actually have a baseline and we should look at what are common in your neighborhoods and what we can work on that would be across all of them. Because if we take two neighborhoods every 2 years, it's going to take us more than a decade to actually get through with that. And things are changing so rapidly. So this is a good idea. It's really to go and find out, talk to the neighborhoods. We have neighborhood meetings. We have neighborhood groups come in, 2 or 3 times a year. We can bring them in, all the neighborhood leaders, open up a meeting and do this. And then we start with that and say, okay, so, I'm from Woodridge, and so this is what Woodridge and Wilburton have in common, for example. And then find out what's different and focus on that. We have to be more efficient and effective, and we cannot wait to work on the neighborhoods and find out what's going on, what you need, for 10 years, because things just change too quickly. So I think this is a good idea.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stokes. All right.
The audience? A little bit about half of the audience, maybe 2/3.
Okay. 7 out of 10, here we go. Neighborhood planning schedule. Neighborhood plans are scheduled to be completed at 2 per year. The update for the comprehensive plan is scheduled to be completed by 2023. So raise your hand, candidates, if you support funding a majority of neighborhood plans before the comprehensive plan is in full swing.
Taxes?
No. It means funding as in the city council budget.
All I know is whoever wrote this question never misses a council meeting. Lots of detail here, okay? Raise your hand, candidates, if you support funding completing a majority of the neighborhood plans before the comprehensive plan work is in full swing in 2022. Okay. No one raising their card on that?
Okay,
Audience?
so we had, I'm not sorry, could you raise your hands a lot higher? I didn't see it. Janice,
Just about
James, and
everybody.
Molly.
Okay. So now we're on to number 8. something you could wrap your arms around a little more easily here. Neighborhood character. Raise your hand, candidates, first, if you feel that the city should restrict building size in keeping with the existing homes and character of the neighborhood. Raise your hand.
So read the three parts.
Well, in single-family neighborhoods, some allowable footprints are out of scale with the existing homes, which results in what are called McMansions. You know, they take down 2 single homes and they build a mini mansion there. On the other hand, restricting what could be built in the future would reduce the property value. So, with that said, raise your hand if you feel that the city should restrict the size of homes in keeping with the existing homes and character of the neighborhood. So if you've got say a neighborhood where you've got between 2,000 and 3,000 square foot homes, you would not permit a 7,500 square foot home. So again, candidates, raise your hand if you believe the city should restrict the size of homes, new homes, in keeping with the existing size of homes of the neighborhood.
Nobody's biting on
No
that.
takers? All right.
Anybody in the audience?
Audience?
So about 4th of the audience.
Yes. All right. On to number 9 of 10, code compliance. The City Council has directed code compliance not to act unless there is someone complaining. Neighbors are sometimes uncomfortable calling out neighbors. Well, I don't know. If they could do it in secret, I don't know if people can do that. Anyway, neighbors are uncomfortable calling out neighbors by name. Those called out feel it is unfair when they see similar violations going on. So, candidates, please raise your hand if you would direct code compliance to act proactively by creating a list of issues and to enforce and prevent those issues. If there are any questions about what that means, Pamela will.
So it's common issues, not every issue, of course, but getting a list of things that happen all the time, over and over and over again, and people feel uncomfortable calling out their neighbors, I guess, on like big piles of like leftover stuff in the house getting built or something, construction material from the front lawn.
Or the blue tarps or stuff like that.
Yeah, they see other people getting away with it, so why did they get caught? So we had common list of issues. Shady?
No.
Oh, you're just raising your hand?
Yeah.
So raise your hand if you would like them to work on some common issues that come up over and over.
By creating a list of common issues to enforce as well as prevent.
Right. So prevent, enforce, and prevent. So prevent would be maybe some education on some of these common issues that keep on coming over and over and over again. Because maybe people don't even know that it's a law. I wouldn't have known it's a law. The RV laws here are so much different than Montana. You know, we like to have our RVs showing up, but here we have to keep it behind a screen. So it's just different laws, knowing what the laws are in the state.
So do you mean you want our code compliance officers to drive around the city and look for violations? That's what we're asking.
If they're common violations, yes.
She does head to the chase, doesn't she?
Well, okay, I'll give you another example. Another example is if you say you saw an Airbnb ad that says that this thing is illegal, they don't investigate it because they don't have an address for it. So that's another thing. So, okay, how about the audience?
Okay.
Okay.
So the
10
last,
people?
the last question on our lightning round, this is a good one because so many competing principles here. The issue is trees. The city is committed to a 40% tree canopy goal. We have tree canopy 40% of the landmass of Bellevue, but it does not have a plan to get there. A tree master plan would allow timely and effective decisions, setting a minimal standard for all the neighborhoods to have a shared direction, mature trees from being removed.
And it's before the Great Neighborhoods program. So
Great
right
Neighborhoods
now,
program,
the
okay.
trees program is like, when we get to the Great Neighborhood planning, when it gets to you in 10 years, you'll have a chance to weigh in on it. Until then, you don't get a chance to weigh in because we're not doing overall city planning.
Can I throw something else in here? One of the things you don't mention is, should there be city restrictions on people cutting trees on their own property?
Well, that kind of goes into this issue because if you cut the trees, but part of that is through the master planning process, we would all come to an agreement on whether we should or not.
Okay, so with that
that's
said,
why I'm not saying like what you should do or what you shouldn't do, but can we come together on this issue?
okay, so with that said, candidates, if you could please raise your hand if you think the city of Bellevue should complete a citywide tree master plan to reach that 40% tree canopy goal. Councilman Stokes says we have
It's
it.
fine with me because we have it.
All right.
Yeah, we're working on it right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so is that a yes up and down the road here? And did someone want to use their card? Okay. Is that yes or no? Okay, good. So with that said, lightning round is finished. This is a question that I think many of you are waiting to see the candidates ask. All the candidates are asked one question. This time we're going to start with Stephanie Walter and go this way, and then we'll start with Janice Zahn, go this way. Here we go.
Okay, so let me key it up here for a second. Stephanie will have 1 minute, Jeremy will have 1 minute, and Stephanie has 30-second rebuttal, and then Jeremy has 30-second rebuttal. So we'll do it as
A mini debate.
a mini debate between
Okay.
the two, yeah.
And here's why the rebuttals. The motto of the Bellevue City Council is 7 strong. And voters need to understand who best matches their views and values. So, candidates, what distinguishes you from your opponent? What's the difference? And why you and not him or her? Include views, values, and vision. Stephanie Walter.
Okay, I've lived in Bellevue 30 years, over 30 years, and I decided to run for council because of my experience. But doorbelling around Bellevue, I was inspired. I was inspired by people in Bellevue and how much they care about their city. They think there is a lot to preserve and protect in Bellevue, and I completely agree. I've lived through many of life's cycles in this city. A newlywed, young mother, school-aged children, empty nester, and I helped my mother through her end-of-life care. I've seen a lot of things. I can represent babies to seniors, newly arrived people in Bellevue to founders of the city. I've seen so much and I've listened to so much. I've been on my neighborhood association board for several years now. I served as chair of the planning commission. I'm currently elected to the East Bellevue Community Council, and I am a community builder and a consensus builder. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie Walter. Okay, Jeremy Barksdale, what distinguishes you from Stephanie?
All right. So, in addition to having a diverse academic, professional, and community service background, in terms of having a tech degree, I have a PhD in computer science as well as a master's in public administration, have worked in private industry as well as the public sector and the federal government. And so I've had this range of experience over the years, and I've been involved in my community all my life since I was a youth. So while I may have moved to Bellevue just 6 years ago, I've been involved ever since I was a youngster. And since I've been here, I've been involved. I immediately looked for opportunities and also served on the Planning Commission and also just finished a term and currently still serving on the Planning Commission. And so, what's big for me, and also co-chaired the Wilburton Citizen Advisory Committee, where, I prioritize making sure that, and push for making sure that we have community engagement as well as making sure that voices are heard as part of the collaborative environment.
All right, thank you very much. Quick rebuttal, and again, you can rebut or choose not to, or use part of your time rather than all of it. It's up to you. Go for it, Stephanie.
Okay, if we're going to talk about job experience, I have a background in finance. I've worked at hospitals. I've also worked in tech. I left working in tech to go back to work in a service industry because that was important to me to give back to my community. I put people over politics, and I put Bellevue residents over political party.
All right, Jeremy.
So I usually talk about my day-to-day job, and also when we think about leadership in terms of adaptive leadership and acknowledging that, when we're talking about community work, we're talking about work that doesn't have a fixed answer. It involves engaging with the community. My day-to-day job as a researcher is just that, advocating for users, getting their input, engaging them. And what I've heard at the door and what I've heard throughout the community is you want to be engaged, and that's what I do day to day, and I commit to doing that.
Thank you very much, Jeremy Barksdale. Let's now go to Holly Zhang and John Stokes. Holly, what distinguishes you from Councilmember Stokes?
I'm an immigrant. I was born in a small village, and I have come this far not by chance, by the choice. And I lived in the U.S. for 17 years, and I have run my small business and my husband too for over 10 years in downtown Bellevue. And we have raised over $200,000, and this money given back to the hospitals and helping families in the last 10 years. And we have done over 300 fundraising events through 3 states for hospitals. And I married outside my race, and I have a missed baby, just turned 2 years old. And my campaign is also diverse, and I represent the diversity.
Okay, thank you very much. John Stokes.
I've been involved in this community since 1992, worked on every bond and levy campaign for the district. I supported and worked on the bond campaign for the parks at the 2006. And I've worked, and I was on the Parks Board for 3 years. I've been involved in planning for all of the parks that we all enjoy now, and it's been a great delight to actually go there and see those. In addition to that, I've been very heavily involved in education in all sorts of ways. Bellevue School Foundation for 14 years. I was a co-founder of Eastside Pathways that is dedicated to be a backbone agency to make sure that every child has a chance to succeed. And it's a fantastically successful organization that works across the city. I've been involved with I'm chair of the YA Salmon Recovery Council, and I have long experience and I have the breadth and depth to keep us moving forward.
Holly, is there anything you want to rebut? Or add?
I was born in the village. My childhood has made me solving some tough problems. And I always think outside the box. And our city facing so many issues. And I want to bring to the city new solutions, new energy, and new blood. And shelters are good, but they are short-term solutions. They are not long-term solutions. So that's my incumbent propose. But I will do housing first.
And now, John Stokes.
I brought a lot to this city, and including something very exciting new called the Downtown the Grand Connection, and just got back from Dallas on the VDA trip, and we're working on that, and that's something, I brought a lot of new things to this community. We can all do that, and it's necessary to have it up and down the line. And there's a part of diversity in me. One, I'm from Texas and grew up in a segregated situation, and I am a little bit older. And I think that makes it important. But as far as the shelters go, yes, shelters and housing have to come together, and shelters are temporary and they're focused to make sure people can be successful.
Thank you very much. Okay, James Bible and Jennifer Robertson. Mr. Bible.
I've run an organization in which I was the supervisor and executive director of 22 different other chairs that included economic development, finance, veterans affairs, civil rights, human rights, housing, police accountability, and the like, and political action. I've been just about everything in Bellevue, from a tenant in a one-bedroom to a person that lives in a house, to a service worker, to somebody that's a business owner, to a lawyer, to a student in middle school and high school. I am absolutely dedicated to being in a place where I do the best that I can for you, and I'm honest about it. I won't rest on my laurels or the laurels of anybody else. I will tell you honestly what I think we can do, and I'll try to push for that. And it won't just be about developing a plan. It will be about executing that plan and making it happen.
Thank you, Mr. Bible. Jennifer Robertson.
Thank you. There are three things that differentiate me from my opponent. One is my record of service to the people of Bellevue. Two is my professional expertise and knowledge that I've gained from my profession and my years of service. And three is that I approach serving on the Bellevue City Council in a nonpartisan way. I have not sought nor received endorsements from either political party, and I take that very seriously because we represent everybody. So first, on my record of service. Before I was on the council, I was on the planning commission for 6 years. I chaired that. I chaired the light rail committee. But going back before that, I was involved with my neighborhood association and with my neighbors. I've done a huge record of service on the schools with PTA boards. I've been a Girl Scout leader for almost 10 years now, because I believe that love is a verb, and I love this city, and I've shown it by my years of service. I've been on the council for 10 years. My background is I'm an attorney who represents cities with a specialty in land use, so I have an expertise that no other council member in Bellevue or many other places has, and that has been very helpful at being an effective advocate for you.
James Bible.
I've served my neighborhoods too, every day. Maybe not as a council member, but as a human being, interacting with my neighbors, doing anything that I can help, having previously worked for the YMCA with children, having been a foster parent of 2 kids that couldn't be housed anywhere else. A therapeutic foster home is what I did and how I worked. I've been in a place where I've been absolutely dedicated to anybody that needed help and needed some form of assistance, and have been a person that's always been dedicated to solutions.
Ms. Robertson.
Thank you. Bellevue has a lot of complex issues with the Amazon announcement, affordable housing, homelessness. It is not the time now for on-the-job training. Experience matters. I have expertise in public safety, transportation, and land use through my record of service, which means I can be really effective. The other thing that I have is I have connections to legislators, council members, county council members, all throughout the region. The number of people on my phone who make decisions in the state of Washington is a lot, and you would lose that if I'm not reelected. Thank you.
No, it's 1-1-30-30.
Okay.
And finally, JDU and Holly Zhang. I'm sorry, Janice. JDU and Janice. Thank you. Mr. Yu.
I have a vision for Bellevue. Bellevue is a very safe place that multiple and diverse communities will enjoy the high quality of life and a thriving economy. And I have a lot of values, but as a council member, I will be very for the accountability and integrity. I will be accountable for the people, residents, and voters, because that's my responsibility. And integrity, I say what I do what I say. And I have views that I say neighborhood first, always. Neighborhood safety must not be compromised. I know low barrier homeless shelter near our neighborhoods and schools, and no heroin injection sites. I am an independent candidate. I don't have an endorsement from the people who have influence to the Seattle policy. I don't want those policies to come into our Bellevue. Thank you.
Right. And again, I've been up since 3:30 this morning, so I'm sorry I messed up your name, Janice.
So I'm running for re-election as a bridge builder, as a collaborator, and I absolutely believe in and live the 7 Strong motto, because ultimately I believe in the vision of Bellevue and the 3-year priorities that we adopted at our retreat. And the way we're going to move forward is together in unison, because with Amazon coming, we need experienced people who are going to be able to work together to figure out how to work through the kind of challenges that kind of growth is going to have in our community. I have experience working in government for the last 15 years. I have a lot of relationships both at the local level, supported by our local leaders, our state legislators. I also have advocated at the federal level for funding on the commute pool, as well as going down to Olympia to work on your behalf, because advocacy absolutely matters. We cannot fund the kind of things we need to do alone. We need to do it in partnership.
Thank you very much. Mr. Yu, 30 seconds.
I once was awarded the Peak Award from the T-Mobile because I was one of the very outstanding engineer. I did a very good job, and I have a lot of other experience involved not only the community but also the city. And the experience is also I have a lot, but the important is leadership is what I have, and I have the vision. I want Bellevue to go the right direction. I don't want the Bellevue to become like a second Seattle.
And the last 30 seconds in this entire segment goes to Janice Zone.
Leadership is about going together as 7 Strong. No one of us has that magic pixie dust and the one solution. The way we're going to solve issues is by doing it together, by being in the community, by listening and working together in partnership. That is both with the community as well as with businesses. I've been endorsed by both folks in the community as well as business and our state legislators, because it is those partnerships that will get things done.
All right, candidates, thank you very much. Now the round of the forum belongs to you. We have a short period of time for a question and answer. Pam, how's it going to work?
So I'd like first, if anybody has a question that has not been covered, the area of topic has not been covered tonight. Let's see if anybody has a question like that. Okay, so,
All right, my question is directed towards Mr. Weigel. You mentioned on one of the handouts that I received that you plan to deal with economic growth by increasing minimum wage. And I know that Seattle recently increased their minimum wage, and studies have shown that even an increase from $11 to $13 resulted in, although workers obviously were paid higher, the consequence was that employers had to give them reduced hours, had to lay off workers, etc. And they found that low-wage jobs, hours decreased by 6 to 7%, while wages only increased by 3%. So my question for you is, how are you going to make sure, if we do raise the minimum wage, that we don't have a reduce in hours and thus less pay for these workers?
Thank you for your question. It's well thought out, and I think you typed it up and did all those things, and that's great. The reality is that there are a lot of studies in relation to affordable wages, living wages, and increasing the minimum wage. And also reality is that many of those minimum wage studies actually say that those that are now receiving more money are doing better than they've ever done. One of the things that's ever present is that we often don't go far enough in terms of our minimum wages. So if you cite one study, you got to cite the other studies as well. And New York City is a clear example of minimum wage actually doing very well, even though they haven't raised it enough.
Next question.
another topic that hasn't been really
I worked in Amazonia, in Westlake, in Seattle, and it was a nightmare. I believe in bicycles. I love Amsterdam, but bicycle traffic was a nightmare. I've often felt that Bellevue City Council is too pro-business. They didn't deal with the high-tension power wires by insisting they be buried. They are allowing all these Amazon jobs to come in. I live in one of the corridors that's being impacted by the design program. So Somerset isn't going to get apartment buildings, but Northeast Bellevue is getting apartment buildings very close. We're getting apartment buildings in density in Microsoft right next door, and I don't see City Council doing things to protect our quality of life. I don't see additional parks. I don't see additional. Where are you going to put the additional parks? How are you going to maintain quality of life for the poorer areas of the city? Maintaining equity in terms of services, access, and public services.
Who do you?
Okay, so
No, pick one.
one person.
Jennifer Robertson.
So we have created the growth corridors to put the density where it belongs, which is in the commercial areas. And we're making sure that we put money into infrastructure to get to those. We have almost 100 parks in Bellevue, 2,700 acres of parkland. And one of the reasons we are a livable city is because of all those parks. I've been on the council for 10 years. Every time we've had the opportunity to buy open space, we've done it. We're protecting that undeveloped areas. And we will continue to do that. It's good for the environment, it's good for our urban flooding, and it's good for people to get outside.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to put 30 seconds on the clock for the person to give the question because we got to have short questions or not. Only one person.
Time for a few more questions, sir.
Okay, any other questions that hasn't been talked about?
Hi, Randy Litzenberger, Bellevue High School teacher. I'll try to keep this short. I was pleased to hear about the free canopy assessment and that the opportunity for the city to move forward with that program. My question for Councilmember Zahn is how can opportunities like the Environmental Stewardship Initiative the city's going forward with make Bellevue a leader on topics like climate change? We failed to meet our goals by 2020. There's more that we can do. How can Bellevue do more to lead the community?
We can absolutely do more. So we're in the middle of updating our environmental stewardship initiative. There was a workshop. Anyone go? Well, I encourage you. Oh, okay. Because there are a lot of things we can do. There's also the K4C, which is the 16 cities that are looking at climate action. There are a lot of community groups that have great ideas. I've been advocating for Portland actually has almost 200 different actions, whereas Bellevue only has somewhere in the 50s. So we absolutely have a lot more we can do.
Okay, Michelle. I'm sorry.
Thank you. We have time for 2 or 3 more questions.
I know, I did that also.
I have a question about actually working with community and how input really works in the city. And my question is for Jeremy Barksdale, and I would like to know how he would handle it. I have observed that there's a lot of talk about community involvement, there's a lot of talk about input, but in actuality, projects get put on the schedule, they get moved along quickly. There's not very much input. There's an instance I know of recently where there was one focus group meeting and then 9 months of nothing, and then it's moving along.
Question?
So I want to know how you would make sure that that actually happens and that the input is substantive at the right point.
All right, so you might be surprised to know that this happens in the private industry as well. We have, one of the things that we really try to push is for ongoing continuous engagement with people that, and in this case, with you all, our community. So instead of waiting until there's a project that's on the books and something needs to happen, keeping that conversation going and understanding what the needs are in the community along the way helps with knowing who to go to in terms of which community and what the top issues are. And tactical urbanism, which means giving you a chance to engage in providing input and pilots as they are happening.
Okay, any other topics that we haven't covered? Okay, we have some time after this, if the people have time to stay here. We have to be out of the building at 9 o'clock, but until then, you can still ask Jeff your questions. And they all have websites and stuff you can check in on.
What I would like to do, if it's okay, is the candidates spend all this time coming. Why don't we give them 30 seconds each to, quote, close the deal?
Well, I gave them that differentiation, so we actually can't because it's almost 8:30.
Yes. Oh, yes. Okay.
And John has to go to bed.
John has to get up at 3:30 again tomorrow. Yeah, this time we got he's headed to Daniels.
So I want to first a couple things before we leave. One of the things that One Bellevue did this year is we asked candidates some questions before all these questions, which are written out on this sheet. So if you're looking for some more answers of what the candidates agree on or disagree on, look at this scorecard sheet. It gives you our onebellevue.us address, which will have more information, including stuff from the primary that included some of their top issues, how they prioritize issues. And I also want to thank the candidates for coming. They have one more city to have a candidate forum to come to. There's a lot of neighborhood forums, but not many people get to go to those because they're, in one neighborhood, not many yours. Or you're busy that day. Seahawks game was on one of them. Things like that. So,
and thank you, Pam Johnston and Lynn Bellevue.
We have to clean up, but the candidates, if they're still available and they don't have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, maybe they'll answer some of your questions one-to-one. Thank you. And thank you, John, for coming out and staying up late.